Hi there, this is the Look-See for June 2024. The Look-See is a combination of news, commentary, and a little bit of clairvoyant assessment in order to keep a finger on the pulse of what's happening in the world and the things that we would do well to think about deeply so that we can work with them or find ways around them. So the things that came up this month ranged across a broad spectrum of topics, some of them quite interesting, some of them pretty unsettling. So let's begin. Number one, the state of Israel is on the verge of internal collapse, or maybe it's rebellion. I wasn't sure, but things do not look good there. Some people are leaving. I thought more were going to be leaving. And Netanyahu is really not sleeping at night, at least not very well. Number two, we are now rolling forward at full speed with the breakdown of government, money, and social order, all of which will escalate over the summer. As I look ahead and watch that whole thing unfold, it looks like those people who were part of the corruption, those who have played up the differences between themselves and others, like LGBT groups, etc., those who have acted as if this whole social organization, governmental, financial thing is a game, similar to King of the Mountain, and those who have not prepared for change are the ones who will suffer the most. So a lot of people are watching and they're trying not to say, "We told you so." So don't say that. That's a rule in our family. You can't say, "I told you so." It makes people feel bad. Number three, by the end of July, there is a crisis in the fields of science, technology, medicine, and engineering. We hear a lot about the banking crisis or the government's troubles, but not so much about these other sectors. A crisis in science will contribute to pulling the rug out from under the entire social order, because science is the sector that validates our world and how it works. The crisis in technology, of course, has been brewing for some time because of the transhumanism issues. The medical crisis is now blatantly obvious and has been becoming more obvious for 4 years now. The medical system is the major distributor of drugs and pharmaceuticals. And if it collapses, a lot of people are going to need alternatives. And lastly, a crisis in engineering will touch every area of life because engineers design and build everything in our world. The real problem is that we're moving from a third-dimensional paradigm to a fourth-dimensional paradigm, where everything is different from the ground up. So be thinking about how you will bridge this step from 3D to 4D. And if you've prepared for it and you're ready, or you think you're ready, then think about how you might be able to help others shift consciousness enough to make it across that bridge. Number 4, Fauci's testimony and poor performance in a recent cross-examination has created a slow but powerfully negative reaction in people. Across a wide swath of the country, people begin leaving mainstream ideas and corporate lifestyles behind. They are angry about the betrayal, and there is an increasing refusal to pay bills and taxes because the government allowed this betrayal to happen and continues to do nothing about it. This triggers action by the government to regain control and put the fear of God into people, but that's a foolish move on the part of government because it backfires. It backfires as people become increasingly irritable, rebellious, and derisive. They begin withdrawing their energy from the entire system because they have hit the wall and they're tired of the whole mess. They begin walking away from things, from jobs, from anybody who just doesn't get the fact that they've had enough. They're not willing to explain anymore what's going on with them. It's like, if you can't see, then I don't have time to explain. This walking away is bad enough, but when a population withdraws its mental, emotional, and spiritual energy from a system, that is a death knell for that system, whether it's a city, a state, or an entire nation. It looks to me like the walk-away movement that started as a move away from the Democratic Party is now expanding to become a walk-away from the U.S. government. As this expansion occurs, don't just focus on fears, frustrations, and anger. Focus on what you need, what the future would look like if you ran the world, because you do. You're creating with every thought you think, with every word you speak, and with every action that you do. So, make it a good world. Number 5. Because of Fauci's testimony, there's an increase in the number of lawsuits against the government, the medical system, and the pharmaceutical companies because, like I said, people are angry and they're starting to find ways around the laws and the limits currently in place. This increase in lawsuits occurs in both the U.S. and in Europe as people stand up and say, nope, we're not going to put up with that. Nope, we're not going to do that. Number 6. Number 6 is actually some good news. Because of what's happening in the U.S., and even including across the entire set of Western countries, intuition is increasing, and it's increasing across the entire population. Normally, intuition expands and becomes more powerful when you have a Kundalini awakening or you've been meditating regularly. But when a crisis appears in a population, the people are dumped out of the little boxes that have encased their thinking for decades. The result is a massive opening of consciousness and acceptance of new answers, trying to understand what is going on, and this new openness results in the increase in intuition, in precognition, and moments of deep insight. This is a remarkable opportunity for people to understand that their consciousness is capable of so much more than they were taught to believe about themselves. Number 7. Sergei Lavrov made an astute observation about the U.S. when he said we were, quote, stuck in a colonial mindset and unable to comprehend equal cooperation, end quote. Stuck in a colonial mindset. The high point of this stuckness was the Project for a New American Century. That project was mostly a front for the deep state, but those who thought they were going to rule the world in a top-down way were suckers. Suckers who thought they could have power over others instead of power with others. The deep state was excellent at identifying those who were weak and undeveloped. Those weak, undeveloped people fell for the lure of power put out by those pushing the new American century. Meanwhile, other countries have been moving toward a world of cooperation and collaboration. Everyone matters. Everyone counts. And rude bullies are often outgrown, outsmarted, and outmaneuvered by those with a distaste for rude, selfish bullies. Those who just want to be in the game, those who have real gifts to offer, who want to make the world a better place, will remain open-minded, and they keep looking for others they can work well with. Bullies and their narrow focus end up isolated and alone. As things come apart in our government, we are going to have a chance to identify and isolate the bullies. I think that's already going on to some extent. Those bullies will be the ones giving orders to everyone as if they're the only ones in charge. The ones acting like they don't understand why we are upset. They'll be the ones trying to convince us that they didn't do anything wrong. It was all a bunch of mistakes, misunderstandings, coincidental events that we should just put behind us and move on. Don't fall for that. We have to come together as a planet whose people are moving into the fourth and even the fifth dimension, both of which are based on collaboration and cooperation. Number 8. I saw 1 or 2 attempts to institute a draft in Europe, but wow, these attempts failed miserably. And the military men already in the armed forces begin refusing to go into certain battle areas. Their attitude is based on their perception that the war is illegal or pointless or violates something in the laws. They're not even really sure. They just have this feeling that this is wrong. They are not as concerned about the possibility of dying as they are about being charged with war crimes later because public opinion has decided that the war was something fomented by the deep state and everyone who went along with it is a criminal. Number 9. The banks are struggling badly, and they're behaving in unusual ways. They are having difficulty getting money at the repo window at night, and the ability to get your money out of the bank becomes quite spotty. I have experienced this myself, and other people have reported it as well. Sometimes you're able to withdraw money, and sometimes you have to go back to the bank a couple of times before you can take out any sizable sums. Anyway, it looked to me like the banks were going down. Number 10. This point and the next couple of points have to do with things I saw regarding the November election. First, I saw mail-in ballots being printed, lots and lots of them. But as I was watching that, a whistleblower stepped up and revealed that heavy printing was going on in a couple of key states, which caused some uproar and renewed calls for something to be done about mail-in ballots and voting machines. The result was that people demanded that the election be halted until issues could be sorted out and we get to the bottom of the election problems. So that was one angle, people saying, I don't think we should do this election. So then number 11. Next, still on the theme of elections, I saw a meeting where something about the election was being discussed. Then I was looking at something that I didn't quite understand at first. It looked like a debit card, It had an individual's name and other relevant information on it, including their voter ID. But then I saw that the card belonged to an illegal alien and was not so much a voter ID as a, quote, permission to vote. The discussion in this meeting I was watching focused on whether or not to implement a very late in the game rule that you couldn't vote unless you had one of these cards with your voter ID on it. The time to get one was very short. And the threat for the American people was that without this card, only the illegal aliens would be allowed to vote. I could not see whether they decided to implement this or not, but it was on the table. Number 12. Right before the election, it looked like part of the electrical grid was not working. I saw people huddled under blankets, so it was already getting quite cold. And I thought the grid was down because of sabotage, and there were calls for the election to be postponed. All in all, the plans swirling around the election were all part of an attempt to create as much confusion as possible and get people to demand a delay in some areas, make it impossible to vote in other areas, and postpone the entire election, allowing the current people in Washington, D.C. to stay there a little longer. This whole set of scenes, these 3 scenes that I was watching, closed as I was watching the deep state still working mightily to create a nuclear war. The election and its disruption was like part of a race to trigger a nuclear war before the Democrats were voted out of office. Number 13. Over the summer, governmental breakdown accelerates dramatically, and it becomes painful, really painful to watch. This was backed up by those attending a recent Zoom stream for subscribers to my Patreon channel. We did a zigzag journey involving 3 dates. The dates were first November 11th, 2024. Then we zigzagged back to August 31st, 2024. And then zigzagged ahead to January 10th, 2025. The November target was to see what was happening in your country wherever you live. The August target was to see what was happening with your government wherever you live. And the January 2025 target was to see what was happening with the health and condition of humanity. Now, those on the Zoom stream did not know the dates being targeted. They were just tasked with picking up the date telepathically, then going to that date to see what was happening. Almost without exception, the reports for each date were very similar. Putting the dates in chronological order, August, November, January, the reports for what's happening with government on August 31st were the following. And these are just snippets of each report from all the people there. The government was not there. A big void. Nothing there. Dysfunction. Revolt. Dam breaking. Politicians jumping ship. Explosive emotion. Nobody in control. Exodus. People jumping ship. Again, somebody else seeing the same thing. People jumping ship. Someone saw a gavel splintering, like the kind of gavel normally used to call for order in the court. just splintered and broke. Somebody else said, no government exists. Government not there. There was no government. Restructuring. International failures. Allegiance failures. Financial failures. Regrouping. Final warning. Federal employees discussing concerns about government pay. Like, are we going to get paid? Probably not. Something contested regarding the election. A deluge of water. Trying to stay afloat. Ottawa, the capital of Canada, vacant. Lifeboats for DC. Abandoned. People banding together. Government closed. There was no federal government, only local government. Again, government closed, null and void. Government didn't exist anymore. So those were the reports from August, from what people saw August 31st. So reports for the country, what's happening in your country, wherever you live, on November 11th were: medication fails, uncertainty, people stuck, anger, corruption, breakdown, people helping, people planting and purposeful, chaos, questioning, unsure, dazed, shocked, social unrest. Somebody said they heard people saying, can you believe? Fighting, riots in cities in shambles, grain silos empty, cities with no people and abandoned cars along the roads. Nothing going on anywhere. There were a lot fewer people. Eerie quiet. Weird feeling. People keeping to themselves. Somebody saw the color pink, which is typically love. That'd be nice. Then not many people. Not a lot of food. No election. People very quiet, but not happy. Stoplights not working, as if the power was out. People working the land. Islands here and there. It's probably a symbolic message or symbolic vision. People grouping in these little groups, separated from one another. Looks like islands. People working with farmers. Deflated feeling. Not much working. People busy getting ready for winter. There were also hints of some kind of attack. And then the reports for the health and condition of humanity on January 10th, 2025 were population numbers down a lot. People struggling. Slow rebirth. Cleanup. Bed rest helps people back to health. Tired. Sad. People taking care of one another even though they weren't nurses or doctors. Questions on how to right the medical wrongs. Everyone has been through a crisis. People asking, what do we do? Cleansing. First signs of recovery. People younger and healthier because they were free. People worried about more attacks. Snakes. ETs. Sadness. General sickness. Old and new technology being used. everything being used. UAP technology, very few people. Pharmaceuticals not available. Dazed, uncertain. People trying to improve and take care of themselves. Everyone is in the acceptance stage of grief. A dust layer on humans and everything. Struggle, love, more pink. Light bubbling up from the ground, like bubbling up. The land changed. People pissed. People asking about options for the future. We are at a fork in the path. Those making an effort were going to be okay. Communities were forming everywhere. A new system starting. A lot fewer people. Health deteriorating. People waiting for aid. Other people aiding folks. Hopeful. People sharing and taking care of one another. People waiting for ET ships because those left behind would be healed if they could survive. So the message in all of this, that's the end of what people were seeing. The message in all of this is that we are in the crucible right now, and the pressure is likely to increase at least somewhat. Now is the time, right now. The weather is good, the financial system is still working. Now's the time to bolster your health as much as possible and make sure you have enough basic food, water, supplements, medical supplies, tools, batteries, and connections with family, friends, or community to handle any big changes in your area. So keep in mind that one of the best ways to keep your sanity and security is to help others maintain theirs. And I want to make a little comment as well. When you're dealing with telepathy and you have so many people seeing the same thing, it's a pretty strong message that says, look where we're headed. So that, keep that in mind. At the same time, be aware that if that's what you're seeing, that's probably what you're going to be creating. Okay? Okay, let's move on. Number 14. In midsummer, and we are almost there, Belgium came up. Belgium, the country over in the EU. I'm like, Belgium? It looked like key financial people were leaving for vacation, but they were not planning to return. They were planning to disappear. I was like, oh, wow. Key financial people. That says a lot. Number 15. Mexico. Mexico discovers they have just elected their very own version of Barack Hussein Obama. She does not last very long, their new president. Number 16. Schools in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Atlanta, St. Louis, Washington, D.C., Seattle, and a few other big cities may be unable to open in the fall. They think they're closing down for the summer right now, but they don't realize they are closing for good. Number 17. BRICS, B-R-I-C-S, BRICS continues to expand without any seeming effort on the part of the organizers. By the end of the summer, the entire world may have joined the BRICS group, and a new financial system will be born. This system will be gold-backed, And it also looks like it will be digital. I keep hearing that BRICS and the gold-backed system will not be in place for another year yet. But be careful. This may be a deliberate attempt to keep the whole sham going for as long as possible, to make you believe that you don't have to be aware and ready yet. Not right now. You have some time. Be careful. Be ready and have some cash on hand. By the way, I was going to mention earlier that I went to the bank to take out some money, and it was more than $2,500. And they said, nope, the limit is $2,500. And I said, well, what if I wanted to take out, more than that? Well, you have to apply. And, I said, well, how long is that going to take? The answer, 2 or 3 weeks. Like, whoa, that's my money. Maybe it's my money. Okay. Number 18. This was something that surprised me. The issue of race and skin color begins to die down. After centuries of racism and prejudice based on greed and power, it finally looks like the first signs of moving past this are showing. In the not too distant future, nobody cares about skin color as an excuse to divide people, except for those who are immature and not well developed emotionally. People who claim that certain races, like the white race, has a sense of ease about their role, their opportunities, and their place in society that the black or the red or brown man does not have. They're really talking about themselves and their inability to be comfortable in their own skin. Everybody has the same opportunities. Make use of those opportunities. Take it to the limit. So, anyway, this is a sign that the population is maturing. Like, yoo-hoo, way to go. Number 19. I did not like this one. Restaurants begin closing down at a pretty fast pace because people do not have money. They do not trust the food because they don't know where it came from or what's in it. And they're very wary about going out to public places. The result is that cooking skills, recipes, kitchen appliances, and kitchen redos and redesigns become more prominent, more important. Number 20. California erupts, and I'm not talking about a volcano. Fighting in the big cities disrupts the supply of fresh food. This causes the prices to go up at a time when people can least afford it. Grow some food, people. Number 21. Religions and churches experience a paradoxical situation. A large and growing exodus of believers leads to an accelerating loss of income for churches. The exodus becomes a flood because people begin opting for the truth and they understand the game that religions were playing. However, at the same time that people are abandoning their former belief sets, the chaos in society drives many people to churches for help because that's what churches have always provided. The result is a slow transformation of many churches and their people into these small, independent, self-sustaining communities. If you belong to a church, you might want to think twice before cutting ties. Churches have always been about organizing community and something to believe in. Just because the beliefs change doesn't mean the community is over. Number 22. The Freemasons came up. Freemasons came up in a small vision in which the organization splintered and fell apart. I wasn't sure what to make of this, but in today's world, the Freemasons have something of a bad reputation. That's because they were infiltrated and corrupted. So maybe the corruption is what is falling apart. Centuries ago, when they began, Freemasons stood for the awakening of Kundalini and the transformation of consciousness that created a new kind of human. They knew that the world was going to go through a very dark period and that they would be persecuted and that much knowledge and wisdom would be lost. So they decided to use the symbols of that transformation as the design template for key cities of the future. Washington, D.C. was one of those key cities, along with a city in Egypt, I can't remember the name of it, and the cathedrals of France, and possibly the city of London. Once the cabal has been taken down, the truth about the Freemasons, good and bad, will come out, and perhaps the value of their early efforts will be recognized. Number 23. The Antarctica ban on visitors came up. I haven't thought about Antarctica in a while, but it came up as maybe that ban on visitors would be like held over people's heads as some kind of a threat in some kind of deal. It looked like one group of people, we'll call them Group A, was threatening another group of people, and we'll call them Group B, in Antarctica. The threat was something like, start doing XYZ, whatever that was, or we will allow people to come to Antarctica. This had, I thought, something to do with medical technology, or some kind of technology. I thought the people in Group A who were not in Antarctica wanted some medical equipment or some technology to be released or shared or made immediately available. But the people in Group B who were in Antarctica were refusing in hopes of using that technology as part of a bribe or a plea deal to avoid prosecution or some kind of military action. That whole thing was very interesting to me. Number 24. A few corporations begin retreating away from following the dictates of the deep state controllers. They begin abandoning the diversity, equity, and inclusion guidelines. They begin ignoring hiring rules and wage policies that help them maintain a lucrative profit margin. These corporations are realizing that they need people. And if the U.S. falls apart, they will have lost their most powerful group of consumers. It begins to sink into board members that money is not the only bottom line. If there are no people to buy products, if there is no money in the hands of those people, if the cost of government compliance in the form of paperwork and waste management keeps increasing, they will not be able to stay in business. So let me say those few things again. It begins to sink into the board members that if there are no people to buy products, and if there's no money in the hands of those people, If the cost of government compliance in the form of paperwork, reporting their diversity and equity and inclusion and all that, as well as waste management, keeps increasing, then they won't be able to stay in business. These corporations have a big lesson in realizing that they are in the boat with us. And they need to think a little deeper and a little further out. That was kind of good to see. Number 25, cryptocurrency dips but does not die. Silver and gold keep climbing. Donald Trump has said that he's open to cryptocurrency and considers it to be a new and burgeoning industry. That's a quote from him. A new and burgeoning industry. How many of you think of money as an industry? I don't, or I didn't used to. I see that it is now, but wow. Anyway, Trump is saying that the U.S. must become a leader in this field. So the message here, don't get rid of your crypto, folks. Number 26. In the past, I have reported that mainstream media was showing big cracks and looked like it was starting to fail. Now it looks like this is showing up even more. The cracks are even bigger. Millionaires who own media that's failing are no longer willing to pay the price of hefty losses. They're going to begin letting these big media companies go into bankruptcy and go down. Bye-bye, CNN, LA Times, Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, and others. Number 27. Germany abandons U.S. policies, directives, and demands, but doesn't say anything. They are quietly taking action to restore themselves, their country, their power, and their position on the world stage. Wow. Good for you, Germany. Number 28, this is our last one. England is like a boiling pot ready to boil over this summer. It looks like it splits into 2 or 3 domains. It looks like Starmer is elected, but then the country comes apart and he ends up being the head of nothingness. So that's it for this look-see. For those who are watching or listening for the first time, the look-see is a brief look at what is happening in our world and where the big trends are headed. Reality is not fixed. It's very dynamic, and it changes according to what we are doing with our consciousness. Nothing becomes real until we make it real. We make a choice. We take some kind of action. We put something together, or we take it apart. Those decisive actions are what determine our path and our outcome. And of course, once we set something in motion, it takes a lot to make a change or get things going in another direction. And that's exactly the reason for looking ahead. If you don't like the direction things are going, you can make appropriate changes in a timely way, or prepare for what looks inevitable. So if we see something we like, we can put some conscious attention on that outcome and help things along. So before I get too far off track, I'll just say it is important to look ahead and assess what is happening and where we're going, so we know whether or not we need to do something different. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great month. Take care.